Veteran Podcast. Thank you for your service.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Bulletproof Veteran Podcast. We are just super excited to have on today two representatives. Actually, they're the founders of Dead Reckoning Collective. All right, we have on the show Keith Dow and Tyler Carroll. And, you know, they started an organization that tried to get veteran authors a voice, basically. And they've succeeded because if you look at their, catalog of books that are out there, they are telling the warrior poet story. And I'm sure you guys will get into a little bit about what a warrior poet really is, but you're giving that voice to these people that maybe got turned down by other publishing firms, maybe had a hard time getting their works out there, or just didn't even know that they should be getting their works out there. You stumble upon somebody who's just writing in a journal or something, and all of a sudden they're in an anthology. But you guys have just been killing it. You're putting book after book out. Your authors are amazing. I actually am lucky enough. I just picked up Lucky Joe, and
Good deal.
I'm
Nice.
just getting into it, already really liking it. Was just reading a scene out of it, the scene where they're talking about Doc's DUI, which is really cool, and I'll get to that a little bit later. I bring that up for a specific reason, but I think it was a very telling scene. If you've ever been in the military, you can relate to a scene like that, and I definitely am enjoying it already. But before we get too much into that, I'd love to hear about the two of you, how you guys got this idea, how you got started, how you met each other, the whole deal. So Tyler, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, so Tyler Carroll, like you said, currently live in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, just one of the suburbs. I'm a firefighter for Flower Mound Fire Department. I was a medic for the 173rd. Now I am working on my master's in creative writing for Lindenwood University. Like most people, it's all online right now. With my schedule, that's just probably the best way I could do it. And Keith and I found Dead Reckoning. We were just texting earlier today, almost 5 years ago. It didn't start as Dead Reckoning Collective. It started as something else. And if you want to get all into that, we can do that.
Sure, go right ahead, man.
Yeah. So the way that it all started was just literally off of a Facebook post where Keith was just like, "Hey, I want to create a space where people can hash out ideas." And stories in general in a longer form than social media allows. And I was like, well, hey, I've been working on something. This is just kind of what I have. And he loved it. He saw it with a critical eye, gave me a bunch of feedback, and was all like, let's make this like the first like blog post for the website. And I was like, okay, sounds good. I did not grow up as a writer. I never really wrote an article for anything before. And I was just like, yeah, let's do it. And the reception was great. We got tons of likes, shares, comments. Like it went mini viral within our very first thing that we ever did. And we're like, oh man, like did we kind of like strike a chord with people like that aren't seeing this type of stuff or pushing something out there that hasn't been done. And so we kind of were like, okay, well, what do we have right now? What do we have here? And so we started kind of wanting to change the narrative, like you were saying, where we wanted to shine this positive light on veterans, specifically transition, where we realized that people have this identity within the military, and they come out of it and they don't really have one necessarily. And we were just like, hey, you were somebody, you still are somebody, be proud of your past, but it's time to move forward, was kind of the idea behind it all. And then we kind of just saw like the need of people to keep wanting to tell stories longer than just a blog post or an Instagram caption or a tweet or something. And we're like, well, people are writing poetry, people are wanting to write short stories, people are wanting to write books. Keith and I were like, well, look, you and I, let's write a book together. Keep it something simple. And poetry was the first choice. And so we're like, let's learn the process of publishing and become a publishing company. And so that's kind of where it all really started.
Yeah. And it's great that it kind of started with poetry. And the reason I say that is that it right away dispels the myth that poetry can't be masculine, can't be that warrior, can't be, and I hate to use the term masculine because there's plenty of female veterans out there that are probably writing killer poetry and are
We actually
awesome
had
warriors.
a ton of female contributions on this last
Yeah.
one.
So I don't want to just
first compilation, but we had a really, really good turnout. And I think some of the best entries were from women on this last round.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Yeah. So I don't want to discount that in any way,
Yeah,
but when you think of poetry, and do you think of the military? You know what I mean? The two don't kind of always go hand in hand. But if you actually go back in history, they certainly do. As far back as the Greeks, that's
every warrior culture.
Every warrior culture.
Been a part of every warrior culture, man.
Yeah.
And that's that. It's funny that you're saying that because like we get that from people all the time. They're like, oh man, like poetry. And then they start digging into like, the really grimy World War I shit and the Civil War stuff. And there were, it's always, it's a vocation. It's, it's been passed down.
Yep.
So it's cool that it's becoming a bit more active because I think there was a lull for a little bit. The Vietnam guys had quite a bit. And then I think there was, people were kind of quiet for a while. So
yeah, no. And, it's good to see, like you said, that it kind of comes back and it's in cycles, and now we can start enjoying poetry again from a warrior or a veteran aspect. But Keith, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, man. So Tyler kind of covered a little bit of it, but I was an MP in the Army.
Okay.
Tyler and I were stationed in Vicenza, Italy at the same time. He was with the 173rd, and I was with a small MP detachment there.
Aviano, Italy.
Terrible. I hate it.
No, a little south of Aviano.
Yeah, I was at Aviano, Italy.
Oh, you were. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
2002 to 2005.
Man, everybody wanted to be at that base.
Oh yeah.
That's an Air Force base.
Well, yeah.
I only had to go there for a couple things, but yeah. So I did 5 years altogether. Tyler and I met during those last 2 years that I was in, and I met him when I think he was a virgin, and no, but he's a big boy now, but he probably weighed like $120 wet, and it was just like. I was young too, but I just didn't the type of people that we were like. We enjoyed each other right off the bat, but I didn't think that we would ever have like a creative relationship.
Okay.
And we've talked about that about 100 times. Like, we just because when you meet somebody, like you're not like, oh, like I journal. Right. Like it's not something that comes up. It's like, you talk about, where you're from and like your sports teams and shit like that. Your creative side doesn't really come up in conversation very much. Now it comes up for Tyler and I all the time because we, can't stop talking about like the stuff that we're doing and what we've done.
Yeah.
But yeah, we really didn't talk about any of that. I didn't know that he wrote at all. I didn't know that we had some of the things in common that we did between like life experiences and interests and stuff. So, we met, we had fun, we were friends. We saw each other after Tyler deployed, like when he redeployed to Italy before the unit got back. We hung out once, and then I didn't see him again until like last year. No, 2017, right?
So yeah.
So we didn't see each other for a long time, but like Tyler was saying, I wanted to start a blog. So my friend Ryan and I kind of started taking the steps to do that. And Tyler immediately, like once I started making posts about people contributing, Tyler reached out and that was that. And like, you could say the rest is history, but really what happened was I think we both had a vision for what the brand was capable of. So we pushed it with that for a little bit. And then I'm talking about the company. But so what I do, I'm in my Master of Social Work right now online through the University of New England. And I actually do my first field placement for that with 107 Foundation. If you don't know about them,
yes,
look them up.
know them well.
Yeah, I'm sure most people do, but they're a really good nonprofit, doing a lot of good medical research and advisory and advocacy work for veterans affected by toxic exposure. So
they've been big in Camp Stronghold Freedom, K2. They're huge with helping out that organization. Chelsea's awesome. She's just
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
just I've talked to her on the phone a couple times. She's top notch.
Yeah. Chelsea's my boss right now. So
Very cool.
yeah, man.
Very cool. I don't know.
So
As a boss, she might be tough, man. You might have.
she's mean. But I think that's what they kind of brought me in for with the social work side, so I can do some client work and stuff. But that's the goal, right? But yeah, so I do that. And Tyler and I just grind on this. I've got 2 kids, and I actually live in Ontario, Canada right now, which is a really long story in itself. But yeah, and that's about it. And we this takes up a lot of our time.
I'm sure. Like any organization. I mean, if it's something
in the best way.
In the best way. If it's your baby and it's like having another kid, basically. And you know, the 3 of us all have kids, so we know how much time that takes up. And listen, it's a joy, but I got no hair left. It's all gone.
Yeah. I tell people all the time that this is like as fun as it's been, and everything being like this new business owner, it's created more stress in my life than the military or fire service, really, because I'm usually pretty not carefree, but level-headed, I guess is a better way to say it, and don't let things get to me this much. But like with all the passion that I think Keith and I have for this movement, this business, the people that we're getting involved with, it's like we just want to get it right. We're loving it, we're enjoying it, but it's when you're putting yourself and other people out to the world to kind of see and kind of dissect and enjoy, you just want to make sure you get it all right. And so it's definitely like raising a kid, where there's rule books, and I guess there's degrees about it, about early childhood education or business, but you still got to live it and grind through it all.
Yeah, and you make a lot of mistakes along the way, and you hope you learn from them a little bit and do the right thing as you move forward.
Absolutely.
But so you guys basically came up with this idea, like you said, it kind of started from the blog. But why does a veteran need their own publishing company? Why not just go to Random House or, you see the Penguin on a book, you find those guys, look them up on the internet, and I'll submit my manuscript or I'll submit a couple chapters. What's the difficulty in that, going that route for, say, a veteran who's telling a story from a veteran's perspective?
I would still encourage people to send their stuff to any one of those places. But I think that where we're starting to differ is, yes, we're a veteran-owned company, but that's not exactly what we are. Like we want to promote this veteran transition. We want to help veterans tell their stories. And currently, yes, we're kind of exclusive to publishing where veterans work, but I think our goal has always been to bridge that gap. One of the first poems, in fact, in memory, the first book that we put out, I write about the divide, and it's about this perception of us and them, where it's more of a we, and kind of that's not necessarily what the poem's about, but that's kind of what I'm getting at in some sense. And so it's like, I don't think it's necessary per se to have just a veteran-owned publishing company just for veterans. But it's such an easy world to work in because we understand each other. We understand the lingo. What's different with Dead Reckoning is like we are an independent publishing company. We're smaller right now with just Keith and I really running it. And so we're able to put a lot more attention onto the authors, onto the creators themselves, and have a relationship with them. And to their benefit, they get more of the profit, And so you can go to a big publishing company, but you're just kind of a cog within the system. You're just one of the numbers, just one of the... Unless you're already a big name, you're just going to be somebody to them where they can put all their attention to the bigger names, And so we can actually have that.
That matters for us too. I mean, if we do take into consideration, whether you've done work to, if somebody hands us a banger of a manuscript, we're not going to look away because you don't have, over 10,000 followers on Instagram.
Right.
That doesn't make sense. We're definitely about the words, but that's something that we're trying to work on too, is to help each author, whether they're with us for one book or 10, is help them build their platform, which goes beyond social media. But we've gotten pretty deep into how we're turning people away like better than when they came to us.
Right. Well, because there's more than just like, hey, I'm going to publish Lucky Joe, all right, I'm going to do this book. But the authors that are on this, like Leo Jenkins, he's a very well-known author at this point.
Mhm.
He's, I think, actually on your website, you describe him as one of the voices of GWAT, basically. I forget the exact terminology that you used on the website, but he has quite a few books. They're well-read. They're pretty well sold. But not everybody's like that, so they might need a little assistance with maybe the second book, or like you said, building that following where they now can grow, become a bigger author, and hey, everybody makes money, and that's great.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
they get their words out there.
Absolutely. And so that's what I think this upcoming year is going to prove to ourselves and in the community, because we did sign Leo, and the way I've described before, it's like we caught like the chupacabra, like he was independently successful, and he jumped on board with us. And so we don't take that lightly at all. That
Huge.
He saw the potential in us. David Rose has seen the potential in us. We see the potential in us. And so it's like we've harnessed something that is it's awesome. It's super cool. But this upcoming year, we are going to focus on some of the people who maybe, like Keith was saying, don't have the big following yet, but we see the potential in them. Leo and David and all these other guys are seeing the potential in these guys as well, and so it's all about building this team where, okay, yeah, you do know Leo or David, but because you know them and you associate them with Dead Reckoning, now you are also going to know a couple of other people that we're about to be putting out and stuff. And then they have their little small community building up already, and they may not know about the other guys. And so this is the idea behind all of this. Is like I was describing to somebody before, and Keith and I talked about it, like we really see us more as like a record label than a publishing company. Somebody's like, what publishing companies are you trying to like not necessarily imitate, but kind of be like is it a Penguin House? Is it random, or Penguin is it a Random House? All these places. And it's like, to be honest, like I look at their stuff and they've obviously are extremely successful, but like we are focusing on the creators, and they build a platform with us in order to all of us rise together, is kind of more our philosophy.
And I think that would really help with what you're talking about also, with trying to bridge that gap between civilians and veterans, because these people live in communities that are probably majority civilian. So if they get their word out and their works out, more people in their communities will read it and have maybe a little glimpse into what it's like to be a warfighter. And it all kind of circles back into why what you guys are doing, it's important that this work gets out there. These words are important for not only the veteran community, but also the civilian community as well. Especially the poetry, because it's so raw, and it's so the term I'm looking for, I'd say it's it gets right to the soul of the person that's writing. Fiction, things like that, you can mask a lot of stuff in that, and you're telling a story, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's great, and you can gain a lot from it. But I find that poetry is stripped down. You get right to the heart of the person, and you can almost feel like you can feel their situation based on the words they're using. Now, Keith, you're a poetry writer as well, correct?
Yep.
And so have you've been doing this your whole life?
Yeah, I mean, I've written for like as long as I can hold a pen. Literally, I think as soon as I could form sentences, I was always like scribbling in some notebook.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've been doing it for a bit, but I really it was always just something that I did, and I never really gave much thought to anything like this. Like I was saying about like Tyler and I's relationship, if you had asked me like when I was young and writing stuff, I definitely wouldn't have considered this what my life would be like.
Yeah, a lot of times people don't. And you said something earlier about you guys didn't realize that you were going to have a creative relationship because you don't talk about that right away. I think the only people that are creative in a way that talk about it right away are musicians. If you meet another musician, you right away, I'm going to play the guitar, or I'm a singer, or whatever. You right away say that. If you're a writer, you generally don't lead with that.
Well,
if you journal or something like that, you don't lead with that.
man, and I've talked to so many people too who like the general consensus seems to be that the military really stifles creativity, like directly or indirectly. So, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but people tend to just, because I mean, on our podcast, like we've talked to at least 4 people that I can think of off the top of my head who have said, while I do this, I did this, but while I was in the military, I didn't do that, or I did it, but I didn't talk about it. No one knew that I did it. You know what I mean? Whether it was music or art or whatever, for whatever reason, they just didn't do that. And I think, some of it has to do with op tempo, and some of it has to do with focus and stuff like that. But I think that's interesting. So,
yeah. I almost feel a little bit different, to be honest with you. I wrote more when I was in the military than when I was out. And I'll tell you why. I say this to my wife all the time. My wife will ask me, why don't you write as much anymore? And I found other creative outlets like the podcast and stuff like that. So that's one reason. But the main reason is I've kind of found happiness now. I'm happy with my wife, my daughter, my life in general. When I was in the military, I was young, I was going through a lot of shit, and I had a lot more sadness. And I wrote because of that sadness. Now, I know I should probably continue to write because it's healthy anyway, but it was very easy. It was easy to sit and drink some beer or a few whiskeys, smoke cigarettes, and sit with a pen and a journal and write when I was sad. When I had some shit to get off my chest, basically. Now I'm kind of happy. It ruins everything. I tell my wife all the time, you ruined everything. You fucked it all up.
Marty was in our little war and literature series that we just put out on YouTube, where we do all these discussions. Marty Scovelin with Coffee or Die magazine specifically kind of talked about that, where he's afraid because his life is good right now with his wife and his career. He's like, and I'm afraid that well runs dry. But usually, like, it just means you kind of stop living like an adventurous life of some sort. You've stopped putting yourself in situations to have stories to pull from other creative people. And he's like, you just become kind of not necessarily complacent, but you become content with your family or whatever else. And so that does kind of stifle creativity a little bit, where sadness or hardship or any kind of struggle definitely helps influence it.
Yeah,
specifically poetry.
Yeah, definitely with the poetry
side helps. Yeah, definitely helps.
I'll pick up a pen from now and then, but it's actually a work that I'm trying to work on, a guide for men for infertility. My wife and I, it took us 10 years to have a kid, and we went through the gamut. So in a way, I have the happiness on the end of it, but I can tap into that just pain that we went through for 10 years, and I'll write about that. And it's very easy. It kind of flows. I kind of envision this book where it'll be like a guy's, story of how they went through the infertility journey as they went through, including trying to jerk off in a cup in a room with everybody standing outside, and you got to, come out and give it to them. And, they should be applauding, but they don't. But
well, that's what your book's for, right?
That's exactly right.
Create change from within.
Like, exactly right. This way, they should be applauding.
Within the bathroom.
But I think everybody draws their own kind of creativity from their own experiences, whether happiness, sadness. Everybody kind of has their own motivation for journaling, writing, whatever it is. Have you guys found that the publishing side of the house is very different from the writing side? So you're both writers, you've both published things, and now your publisher's owning a publishing company. How does that kind of translate? That's got to be a little bit of a tough dynamic.
Oh yeah, I tell people all the time right now, I'm wearing these like different hats and these different roles, these different filters that I have to kind of sort through within decision making and prioritizing my daily life, And so within this, my writing does take a back seat to other people's stories currently. I still write pretty much daily, and then the school helps keep me on track with that. And I've always been somebody who kind of operates a little bit better under pressure. And so when I do have a deadline coming up, it's like, okay, like focus and I do so a little bit better. But right now, again, kind of like, so the analogy that I kind of think about is, and an easy one within the military, is like the confidence course. And you have like these rungs, like those big wooden rungs, and the guys has to climb over the top and then go down on the other side. And it's like, we're helping push up the guys right now, you know? And then once they get up to the top, they're going to turn around and help lift us up, you know? So I'm still not a very known writer by any means, you know. Myself, I'm more known for the Dead Reckoning stuff, which is great. But once I start putting out even more work, my name will be associated with people who are doing well, you know. So it's definitely two different spaces that you have to kind of operate in. But then understanding what's demanded of you as a business owner and a publisher specifically, and then a creator, specifically writer. It's two different kind of headspaces, at least for me personally.
Yeah.
And I think we look at it as like not trying to take as much from it either, right? Like we want to put a lot more into it. And so while we would benefit from, you know, another release, we want to get more releases out before we put more of our releases out. Of
course.
You know, in terms of our own personal projects or another joint venture between Tyler and I, those things are all on the burner, but it's definitely the back burner at this point because we want to work with other people first.
Right.
And one of the benefits of that, if I can kind of add on to it, is like Keith and I, like he was saying earlier, like we didn't know about each other's creativeness and like how this relationship would grow over the years. Like Keith and I are surrounding ourselves with creative minds right now. And so within the past just month or two, when I've become even better friends with Leo and David, like I'm sending them ideas. I'm texting them quite frequently. I send them stories that I'm writing. And as a young writer myself, like they're giving me great feedback and pushing me forward too. And so as I'm still growing as a writer, I'm surrounding myself, like my friends are becoming like the people who I like reading. So I'm definitely taking advantage of it too. And it's fun.
Well, you have like you basically are setting up a network of mentors for yourselves and for whoever you guys bring on. So your younger writers, who are just getting started, they can look to Leo and whoever else you have on the docket. Hey, I'm going through this process, or I'm having trouble with the editing process, or I don't know which poems to choose for my anthology. Can you help me out? Blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. All these things can work in your guys' advantage because the final product's going to be 10 times better.
And that's kind of the education and development side. We can get into that a little bit more later, but it's like what we're doing with education and development and stuff like that. Like you were saying, mentors and stuff, because we're kind of developing like a webinar series right now. We try to really keep our ear to the people who've been following us for a long time, and that's something that's been mentioned more than once, and it's something we've talked about. So that'll come to life sooner than later. So I think that's another thing that sets us apart too, rather than a big publishing house where they're just pumping out books. And sometimes they help with promotion and stuff like that. We also want to help develop writers. We want our hand in that education piece and the development of a writer. So that's definitely something that's important to us. So we're starting there.
Definitely. Now, how many books or anthologies or works have you guys published so far?
Oh, what are we at? 6?
Yeah, I think 6 or 7. So we had the 2 anthologies.
Yeah.
Fact and Memory. Lucky Pieces, Lucky Joe. I feel like I'm forgetting one.
I'm trying to think if there was another one on there. I think it was 6, right?
We're at 6, and
Yeah,
I'm blanking on one right now.
Yeah.
Yes, 6 right now.
Yeah,
so
6.
Yeah. And so that's the thing too, is like we put out Fact and Memory 2 years ago, almost to the date.
Okay.
And so like that's where we really were like, okay, we're a publishing company. But after Fact and Memory, we put out the first anthology, the first volume, In Love and War. And then from there, it was like almost a year break before we really put anything else out. Like I said kind of earlier, or maybe alluded to, was this was just kind of like a side hustle kind of hobby thing for Keith and I before we like Like, is this really something that we're wanting to do? And then when we, like he was saying, like he kind of kept it our ear to the streets, and it's like people wanted it, and people need it right now. And this is like, we got to take advantage of this opportunity. And so when we officially signed Leo back in September of this past year, earlier when we were talking about like if 2020 was a good or bad year, like it was a great year for us because as a creator, and you have all that space and time, all you have time to do is think and create.
Yeah.
And so he came to us with the project and was like, let's do this. And I think what we did helped add value to it. And then ever since that moment, like it just, we've blown up. And so I think we'll be able to easily put out 6 more just this year based off of kind of what we have in the queue.
I was going to say, I mean, after you kind of pair up with a more well-known artist, does the inbox just start blowing up with submissions?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's got to be tough.
And so right now, like, go ahead, Keith.
No, go ahead.
So like right now, Keith and I, like within all of this too, like we've had to constantly kind of restructure not only necessarily the business over these couple of years, but like Keith and I's role specifically. And so Keith like can take this a lot more because he is like acquisitions. So he is way more involved in kind of, like I said, keeping like the ear to the streets. Like he understands the veteran community far more than I do, and kind of knows who's coming up.
Better than I wish I did, honestly.
Yeah. So he knows everybody before I do, and then he kind of filters through a bunch and then sends me some names, and then I kind of keep an eye on them. And then if we have specific works that we're like he's interested or I'm interested in, now I kind of prioritize it and then help see through it to the end, And so Keith's having to kind of filter through that much more, especially since we've did the second volume and brought on Leo, and now with Lucky Joe.
And I think the struggle with that too, like, because Tyler has definitely moved into more of a managing editor. I'm definitely more on the acquisition side, and those are pretty important counterparts. And what sucks about that, you were asking earlier about like the difference between creating versus publishing, and I think like the shitty part about that is like you lose a little bit of like the glimmer, just because I don't know, man. You have to say no at some point.
Yes.
We're starting to hit that. And I think once you get to that point, it's different for our company too, right? If you're looking at a bigger publishing house, they say no all the time.
They say no a lot more than they say yes.
People send their stuff in and they expect those people that are submitting their stuff expect to be told no. Right. I think the problem that we run into sometimes though is that because we're a veteran owned company and we cater to veterans, that there's an assumption that because you're a veteran and you have a written piece of work that we're automatically going to publish it. Yeah. And I think, but at the end of the day, it's still a positive thing because as a writer, we just went over a whole episode of that web series about rejection and stuff. And it's an important part of being a writer. If you're going to put your writing out to the world, like not every piece is going to be selected. Not everything is going to hit. Sometimes you're going to have something published and it's not going to do well, despite everyone else's thoughts. So it's all growing pains and learning curves for us and for everybody. But I think that's definitely been one of the more negative sides of it too. Because we also have to look at, the marketability. Like, of course. Is it going to do well, and when is it going to do well, and things like that. Like more than I ever anticipated I would be researching. Like we're really like trying to dig into the market and see what, COVID has changed a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Like we've had to look into, things like where we're pushing into the formats and stuff like that, right down to it. So
I would have to say, and stop me if I'm wrong, but I'd rather be rejected by you guys, I think, than a big publishing house. And I'll tell you why. A rejection from a big publishing house, you're just getting a letter that says no, basically. If you're lucky, you're getting a letter that says no. You might just get nothing, depending on how you submitted. I'm assuming that if I asked for feedback from you guys, I would receive something.
Oh, of course.
for sure.
So there's a level of, I know it has to be tough to say no. And as you move forward, you're going to be saying no more and more because there's only so much that can be published. Like you said, you have to market it. It has to be, a good work, and it has to be marketable. But it's also great to be able to give some feedback and help those young writers that maybe aren't there just yet. Maybe they shouldn't be published just yet. But a year from now, they might be ready, or 2 years from now they might be ready, and you can really impact that. Like you said, you're going to have some web series with some information, some mentoring for young writers, and when I say young, age doesn't really make a difference. It just might be new to getting a full workout there, but that feedback is just invaluable to be able to know, okay, what was wrong, why didn't you choose me?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what kind of builds those relationships, where like we really are invested into this as a business. And then, like I said, into the people, like the fans, or like the day ones, whatever you want to call them. Like we see the people when they make the orders, like we see their names.
Mm-hmm.
We're behind everything of this business, and so like you guys investing in us, like in turn, we really are investing into you guys too. And so, we take it personal, and like, even yes, it's a business, and we don't want to necessarily take everything personal, but like, we're people on the other end of that phone too,
Yeah.
or computer screen, just like we understand they are. And personally, like I said, like I know how good it feels to put something out there that gets a good reception, and so like, that's like a motivating factor to help other people get that feeling of, we're seeing people right now post on their Instagram's kind of the world that we live in within Dead Reckoning. That's our biggest platform. But we're starting to see people tagging us in their handwritten challenges. They're putting in their bios that they're published author, published poet, and poet warrior poet. And like, we're associated with all that too, and so like, that's huge, and so they're able to tell their friends, and then show their friends on our their book and their poem, or our book, their poem, on our website, so like, it's huge things. And no, it's we hope to continue to be able to do it, but at the same time, Keith and I have like a little as creators and creative minds, we have more ideas than time to make them all happen, so we do have to filter a lot and then prioritize even more.
Yeah.
And the last thing we want to do is see a book do poorly or fail. We know how much people put into their manuscripts that they send us. So when we're looking at it, that's one of the big things that we're looking at. Like, is this going to do well? And if not, then that's where that feedback comes in. You know what I mean?
Right.
But like, we're absolutely not going to put something out half-ass ever. It's just like, there's too much involved, and there's too much responsibility there. Like, I could never live with myself, like, knowing, that we really like just botched someone's work. And that was, like Tyler said earlier, that was the point of Fact and Memory.
Mm-hmm.
When we first started looking at jumping into publishing, Fact and Memory was our test run. That was our pilot. Like, we did that book so that we could learn formatting, all of that stuff, and make sure that we were getting every little thing right, and fine-tuning our process. So
Yep.
No, you can always tell when people pour themselves into their businesses. I say it all the time on this show when I talk to people. You can really tell it, like we were saying earlier, it's your baby. It's everything, and you don't want to put out a bad product. You care about every individual piece of work, because it can make or break you long term as well, the author and the publishing company. Because if you have a book that fails, not only does the author do poorly, but you might lose out on another author who's like, hey, they just put that out and it didn't do well, so maybe I'll go with somebody else. But
Absolutely.
while we're
Hey,
on
give
this,
me 1 second.
okay.
My kids are all yelling. So
No, please.
I'm sorry.
Like, talking about babies.
Yep.
So since you handle more of the acquisitions, why Tyler steps away, what's the process like for an author trying to get in contact with you? So how does that all kind of work?
So we simplified that. We had people sending us stuff in our Instagram DMs. We had people sending us messages on MySpace that I never check. And then we had people emailing us. But we considered a couple different ways, opening and closing books, as far as, we're open for submissions, we're closed for submissions. We didn't really want to do that. So we have simplified the process. So if you go on our website on the FAQ section that we've set up, everything you need to know about submitting a manuscript is there. And usually I will have already talked to people before they submit. If they're asking me now, I can just, because we hammered all that out, I can just say, go to that FAQ section. It'll tell you the format. It'll tell you, what's expected of it and all of that. And it just, that's for us, for readability and, legibility, like, so that we're not straining ourselves, trying to sift through a document. Everything is, dress right dress. Like,
Yep.
That, we can take certain things from the military and not be nerds about it. When everything looks the same, it is a lot easier to inspect. So when we get obviously there's going to be vast differences between one manuscript and another. But when we get manuscripts and they're all in the same format and it's easier on our eyes. It's easier on our brains. And it's easier on the writer too, because for myself, and I think most people, especially if they come from a military background, and people in general, if you have a checklist, then it leaves nothing to chance and it leaves no question. Then
Right.
You just have to bring your A game in terms of, the content that you're throwing into it. But if you have it all in the same font, in the right document type, all that stuff, and we're not like crazy about it. If somebody has some kind of issue, with tech, then we're not going to say like, oh, you can't put it in a PDF, like get bent.
Right.
But we work with people on whatever level. But yeah, we wanted to simplify that, long story short. So
Now, do you look for more, and I'm sure it's in the FAQ, but just for a quick question, do you look for more completed manuscripts, or can they be more of a sample writing, something like that?
So right now we're only taking complete manuscripts.
Yeah.
And
So-
that's a sustainability thing.
Yeah, so currently, like on a business standpoint, that's all we could really take, because we have so many, like 80-90% projects done, or projects that are not 80 to 90% done, and so like that's where our focus is going to be. And when you want to help finish a manuscript or go through that whole process, that's just a lot of time. Now we're to the point now that we're about to start getting editors on staff and just grow the business, the next steps and everything. And so that's definitely in the future. But what I would say is, with these semi-finished manuscripts, like these are the things that we can start doing within these educational series when we start building these workshops, when we start building like these teams. We have a Facebook group, writers group. Right now it's mostly just poems that people have been posting on there, but like pick out a person or two that you feel confident with, that is willing to be an extra set of eyes that understand, hey, this is kind of raw pre-editor writing. It's not done yet. Give me your honest feedback, and start sharing it that way, because that's what writers have to do. It's a very lonely job as a writer.
Yeah, Tyler and I were just talking about this the other day, how he's been sending his writing to everybody. Like, once establishing that network is really important for any writer.
Yeah.
But I think
so
it's
those
really good.
those semi-finished ones, that's what you have to be doing as a writer right now. Like, and you don't want to send that to a publisher either, because another thing that
we've eliminated that as well. Like, we had for a long time, that was another thing that we had to kind of cut. We had people sending us all kinds of stuff in our DMs and via email and stuff, and we can't. the editorial eye is only so good. You know, if you've ever worked with like working dogs, like those dogs are only, you know, good for a certain amount of time, and then they got to take a wicked rest. And we only have so much time, and we're not going to give you any good feedback if we're literally reading, you know, 12 people's half finished manuscripts and stuff like that. The feedback isn't going to help you at all, and it's not going to help us. So
and that was something that Keith and I learned early within our process. Again, like learning it on our own, is I had an unfinished manuscript and I was sending it to Keith constantly too, and like we both just realized that like Keith wasn't benefiting, neither one of us were benefiting from that anymore, because he was seeing chapters at a time and he's like, wait, where does this connect to, and asking these questions, and I'm like, well, I get to it later, and he's like, okay, then why am I reading this now, kind of thing. And so like you don't want to, don't send unfinished work to people unless they know it's unfinished and they're reading this one thing, and you got to maybe give a little context or something.
Something specific.
And so like that's so as a publishing house, completed manuscripts only now. Now if you have like some off the wall idea that it's like, man, this is going to be a really cool fun project that we can work together on, we'll be totally down to get on a phone call and talk it out and everything. But yeah, right now, finished work.
Go to the FAQ, take a look, see what the process is, see what the format is, and get your stuff completed and sent in.
Yep.
Very cool. And then what's the process after that? So say John Smith sends you a manuscript. You guys look it over. Keith, you take a look at it. You say, yeah, we definitely, we're interested. Where does it go from there? For people that maybe have never submitted before or have only submitted and only gotten no's, when you get a yes, how does that process work? Where do you go from there?
So then we'll get back in touch with you and, you know, give you the thumbs up, which is usually pretty exciting. And then from there, then we start the edits because editing is the real writing. That's where, we fine tune the manuscript itself. But we also, past finishing the book itself, we start talking immediately about, you know, have you thought about concepts for covers? Do you have photographs? Do you have artwork? Size of the book, you know, like every little detail. We try to make everything a collaborative effort between us and the author.
Okay.
Yeah. So as far as edits go, at that point, either like you'll pretty much be working with Keith or myself, and we'll kind of like he's saying, I'm kind of more of like the project manager at this point. But as far as editing goes, Keith and I offer both something totally different when it comes to editing. So we'll both kind of skim through it, understand like, okay, this is more my wheelhouse, this is more Keith's wheelhouse, and okay, they're going to take on the one of us is going to take on the editing role, and then within that, discuss contracts as well, of how in like potential release date, what's the timeline on this, what's the final goal of this, what we would be able to offer, so they understand what we as a publishing company are going to be able to offer them within the Dead Reckoning capacity, and then it's about designing the book. And I want it to be a relationship. So I'm the one who's designed most of our covers now. And so like, I'll literally send them like a sketch. And I'm like, this is kind of what I want. And I send it like in phases where I'm like, this is the fonts. This is the layout. This is this. And like, and I'm getting input from the author at each point. So it's a collaborative effort. So they have their hand in deciding kind of even what the cover looks like, you know, where a big publishing house literally has their own design teams. And like, this is what we have, and this is what you got. And it's pretty much pre-formatted or pulled from a stock photo or something that they may add a little bit to it. But no, it's like we create something from scratch kind of together where you at least have some kind of input into it. And then, and then it's about ordering proofs and going through the edits on after the proofs, and then hopefully releasing it soon after that.
Well, I'll tell you what, you guys are killing it as far as the designs of the covers are going. I mean, Lucky Joe is an awesome cover. War and After, I was a big fan of the cover of that. Now, I haven't ordered that book. I'm doing that this week because I was finishing up Lucky Joe, and then I'm going to get into War and After, especially because now War and After was the one that the proceeds all went to Hunter 7, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
That's awesome. first of all.
Yeah.
I really applaud you guys for that because, again, awesome organization doing just crazy good work for the veteran community, especially the veteran community that has had such a hard time getting people to listen, which is toxic exposure. You know, it's so easy for people, even the VA, especially the VA, to turn around and say, "Nah, you didn't get that from that. You know, you're just trying to get money," or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Hunter Seven's done a great job with shedding a light on toxic exposure, burn pits, all that kind of stuff. How did you guys come up with the idea, and how did you make that all work to give 100% of the proceeds to Hunter
We
Seven?
can't take credit for that one.
Okay.
So that was the beginning of our relationship with Leo Jenkins.
Okay.
Which is, like probably one of our better friendships and partnerships at this point. But Leo came to us once we started publishing. I think it might have been before we actually put out Fact and Memory, because it was when we started working with him, and he wrote the foreword for Fact and Memory.
Fact and Memory, yeah.
And he said, "Hey, I have this book." He had started taking submissions, and he was going to publish it himself, but he really had no idea how to do that. And knowing Leo, if he wanted to do it, he would have just learned everything about what he had to do and done it. But he really liked our mission, and he liked working with us. So that was what he wanted to do. So the first volume of the series went to all the proceeds went to Gallant Few.
Okay.
But we've decided that we're going to change the proceeds, the beneficiary. Sorry, every time we release one of those books. So
then Hunter Seven was like kind of the next one up.
Hunter Seven was the next one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah. We just kind of soundboard off each other, like who's making the big differences within the communities right now, and people always want to. The nonprofit world right now has trust issues and everything, but they seem to be one of the stand up ones, and so it was a pretty easy pick, and people get a physical product as well as knowing their money is going to a good cause. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. It is. It's a really powerful project in general. Like being able to go through those submissions. Leo chose all the submissions on this last round. We all kind of had different roles in the creation of that book. So, and that
a lot of hours.
Yeah, many, and this, yeah.
There was a lot of authors in that book. I mean, it's not.
I think we got close to 80.
I was going to say, I was going to say just shy of 100, but I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot to go through. That's a lot to kind of coordinate.
See, you earlier talking about submissions and everything. It's like for the first anthology, Leo is the one who handled all that. So like we barely exposed to it. And then when people start finding out, once we sign Leo, once we open up the doors for submissions for volume 2, it was probably close to 1,000 that came through like almost immediately.
Yeah.
And then now that we signed Leo, now we're getting manuscripts into us constantly, and so like we're no short of projects or submissions and stuff. Now it's about, okay, how do we tailor the business in order to get as many of these out in the best fashion, and so again, like Keith and I take it personally, so it's like, okay, we obviously can't spread ourselves that thin and devote all this time on each individual project, and so we're looking into doing collections, a little bit more of these anthologies, possibly anything that could possibly get published. We're looking into doing with kind of like magazine,
photo books,
books, magazine type things, literary journals. Like we're brainstorming a lot of different ideas, and we're definitely narrowing it down to what fits us, like the brand in itself and the submissions that we're getting. And so the people, like this community that we've created, like every one of y'all are helping kind of drive this engine wherever we're headed,
Yeah, and listen, you guys are doing a good job driving it yourselves. I mean, just the Instagram posts, the videos that you guys put out, the call for a daily submission where you can write and then you if you're chosen, you get put up in your story or in a post. That's awesome, because for somebody that might not feel like they are good enough, if I put a submission out to you guys and you put it up on your story or in your feed, you're validating everything that I've done this entire time. And now you're going to make me want to write more. So
Good.
even just simple stuff like that, you guys are growing your own community just through Instagram and the stuff you're putting out there. I really like that model, and I like the fact that you're not trying to grow too fast. You're taking it. You're taking in submissions. You're picking and choosing what you want to put out. You're not like, hey, everything that's meets this mark, we're just going to put out. We're going to put out. We're going to put out, because if you grow too fast, that's not a sustainable model.
Oh no.
So
Tyler and I always, like, if you listen to early podcasts, we actually always said that the cool part about it, because Tyler and I are like very family oriented, career oriented, all that. We always used to say, like, oh, the best part about this is, like, we can pick it up and put it down. And that is not a true statement anymore.
No. It literally, like I said, it was a passion project hobby. Like, anytime we put a little bit of effort into it, it grew, and we're like, oh, this is awesome. But then when we wouldn't put any effort into it, it's not like it would just die. It just sustained on its own somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
And then now we have gotten to a point that Keith and I are very aware is if we let this thing go, somebody else is going to pick up and take off, or this movement kind of just not necessarily dies, but it just stands still. And so we do take that as a personal responsibility, and we're eager to rise up with it,
Yeah.
Now, where can people get the books? So you have a website, but can they get them through Amazon? Are they on digital, that type of stuff?
Everything is on Amazon.
Okay.
We are starting to stock all of our releases on the website as well. So, like, for example, and we do that so that more money goes to the author, but then those charitable projects that we have, the poetry compilations, then more of that goes to the organization.
Yeah,
definitely. So, but Amazon is basically right now, if you want all of them, you can go to
Amazon.
Amazon.
Is good to go for the whole catalog.
Okay.
But I think we're waiting on a shipment right now, and then we'll have everything up.
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
So to kind of talk on that too, like, we are a small business, and you see the two guys who do pretty much most of the work. And again, our focus is always on the author, the creators in itself. And so more money in their pocket is always the goal, based off of their efforts that they put into the book. When you buy through our site, more money goes to the authors. Amazon takes a big cut.
Yes, they do.
And so as a small business and the rebellious mindset that Keith and I have, we want to stick it to the man in any capacity that we can. So we encourage you guys to go to our site, deadreckoningco.com, and buy the books directly from us and any of our products.
Fuck Bezos.
Yeah. He's about to be a trillionaire, so
yeah,
we don't need to put any more money in his pocket.
So he got a divorce. She took half. He's already earned all that back and more.
Oh yeah, he has
every dime that he lost.
$160 billion. I did the math the other day. Amazon has 800,000 employees. He can give all of his employees $200,000 and still have half of his net worth.
My and not to get down too much of a rabbit hole,
No.
my biggest concern with Bezos and Amazon is their web services and their ability to control what is really on the web through servers, server space, all that. I mean, you just saw it with Parler. Whether you like Parler, don't like Parler, I don't like to get into politics too much.
Yeah. No,
but they were able to crush them in all of 2 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah. All of them did.
All of them did. Well, and really, Amazon put the nail in the coffin. You took them off of the host sites where you can actually get the app, but then Amazon came in and said, I'll do you one better. You don't have any servers anymore. You're basically not on the internet.
I didn't know they did that. I didn't know Amazon would roll into it. I knew Google and Apple did.
Yeah.
Took him out at the knees.
Basically, you have no chance of surviving because he didn't want them to.
And that's what's, we don't need to get down too many rabbit holes, but that's just what's funny is people have this facade that the government is controlling everything. It's like, no, big business has a lot of it.
Big tech is the one you better worry about. You betcha. All right, so we covered where you can get the books. Where can people get more information? I know you talked about Instagram and Facebook, the website and stuff.
So
Best places to get information.
Right now,
Instagram's
a
our
lot
main
of
platform.
yes,
Okay.
Instagram's our main
sure.
platform. Where a lot of my focus personally is going to be at is the YouTube channel. That's where I'm
Yeah.
going to start
very cool.
diverting a
Yeah.
lot of my attention towards within this growth is these web series. Right now, we got the war and literature one where I got to sit down with Leo Jenkins, David Rose, Marty Scoveland, and Graham Barnhart and talk about war and literature. And those will be released weekly. But I've always wanted to put stuff on YouTube, and so this is a good opportunity to put good information out there. So I want to push people to our YouTube because that's what's growing right now. But Instagram will always probably be like our base
until it's not.
yeah, until it's not.
Actually, that's a good point too. Is we have just like you were saying, with like the Amazon stuff and Parler. Like, I mean, we don't run a gun on our Instagram, so we're largely unaffected. It doesn't mean that we're apathetic to any kind of censorship issues, but we do consider potential outcomes. We always used to ask, like when we first started our podcast, like, what would you do? We'd ask every guest, like, what would you do if social media went away?
Right.
And we ask ourselves that question all the time. And I think if you are a person who thinks that there's a platform where you can just start a business for absolutely nothing and not have to pay something at some point, and pay a lot of something at some point, they got you. So we're not naive, and that's why we're kind of trying to beef up our mailing list, and like Tyler was saying, cross-platform, get into the video content as well. YouTube, I think we also just didn't want to just put whatever out. It took us a while to figure out exactly the kind of series that we wanted to introduce, and the kind of video content that we wanted to put out. We didn't want it to just be Tyler and I really actually didn't feature ourselves for a really long time on the business, and that was kind of important to us.
Neither one of us are the guy sitting in a car with the phone in front of us,
right?
Talking about our ideas and motivations and beliefs.
You guys killed it on the edit, though, as far as the videos are concerned. I mean, I wanted to crack open a beer and just kind of sit and listen to you guys because it had that vibe to it. When you sit there and you look at the series, I really enjoyed it. It was well put together.
So another thing that just to kind of talk just that much more about is like one of the biggest things that's been the biggest benefit about this business is being able to surround ourselves with other creators. So like Keith and I have like a literally open dialogue every day about ideas and then just family life in general. But the guy who created our logo was one of my best friends from the Army that I went to Afghanistan with.
Nice.
And the guy who filmed this video and produced it is one of my best friends within the fire service now. And so creativity kind of sparks creativity, and this passion sparks passion, and so we're able to build off of each other. Anytime I have these ideas, I'm finding these people that are interested, and then I'm wanting to find ways that they can get involved. And so, like he said, like we didn't want to just put something out video wise. He was looking into getting into film, and I said, I had this big idea. Are you interested? And he's like, all right, sure. And that was his first time he's ever done anything like that.
Very cool.
And it turned out freaking amazing.
It really did. It really did.
And it's again, like these are the type of people that we're surrounding ourselves with that can handle that pressure, because that level of trust that we have for one another because of our background with the jobs that we have, is when people like us come through for others when they rely on us,
You know how to get through the finish line. That is something that we could all say.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, guys, I can't thank you enough. I've had a blast talking to you. Like I said, I've enjoyed your work. I'm looking forward to finishing up this book and then getting on to the next one, and definitely supporting you guys. And knowing that the money's going to Hunter 7 even makes me want to buy the book even more. So I'm definitely happy about that as well. But I'm definitely going to enjoy it. So Instagram, what's the handle?
Dead Reckoning Collective.
Dead Reckoning Collective. So that you can go there, get all your information. The website, Dead Reckoning
deadreckoningco.com. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Excellent. You can get everything you need there. And well, guys, like I said, keep going, because I'm looking forward to 6 more books this year or whatever you guys put out, because it's great stuff.
Good, man. Appreciate you having us on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason.
It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you.